started with opening statements from all of the candidates, beginning with Senator Nasheed.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I am Jamilah Nasheed, and I grew up in the Doris Webby housing projects with my grandmother and my 3 siblings. At the tender age of 25, my mother committed suicide because she fell into a deep depression, simply because my father came home from the Vietnam War and was shot and killed by way of drive-by shooting. I know all too well about mental health. I know all too well about gun violence, and I know all too well about poverty. I am running for president of the Board of Aldermen because this city is not working for everyone. This city is not working for the unhoused. Our city is not working for the 20% of young men that are unemployed. Our city is not working for the mothers who simply want to have their children's murders solved. Our city is not working for those individuals who simply want their trash picked up every week. I'm running because we need a change. We need a bold and effective leader that knows how to get things done, and I am that leader. I've served in the budget, on the budget for I served that oversees a budget of $28 billion, okay? Brought $14 million home to the city of St. Louis for education and for those individuals who is looking to re-enter into society. We know that this city needs a change, and we know that it will not be a change under Lewis Reed. 20 years is long enough. We cannot have individuals that's willing to make backdoor deals on the backs of our airport. We need someone that is an effective leader, a bold leader, a leader that gets results, a leader that is also data-driven, and a leader that truly understands that this city is going backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Green.
My name is Alderwoman Megan Green. I represent the 15th Ward right now, and I'm running for president of the Board of Aldermen because the status quo in this city is not working. We are known nationally right now for our problems, whether it is our high crime rates, our number of officer-involved shootings, our STD rates, our infant mortality rates, our child asthma rates, the list goes on and on and on. I'm tired of us being known for our problems. I want us to be known for our solutions. I want us to put St. Louis on the map for the right reasons. So how do we do this? The first thing is we have to address crime. I have knocked doors in every single ward in this city, talking to people on their front porches and in their living rooms. And what I hear is folks who are afraid to even go out of their houses and get to their cars. We are a city that's spending almost 60% of our budget on public safety right now and have the 3rd highest staffed police department per capita in the country, and it's not working because we're not making the right investments. I want us to do what was done in Richmond, California, add social workers to our police department, start something called Operation Peacemaker to help de-escalate gun crimes before they even happen. Richmond decreased their crime rates, including their homicide rates, by over 60% in 5 years. We can too. We also have to fix our development system. Right now, we're at a place where over 70% of our tax incentives went into the 3 most affluent wards in our city over a 15-year period, and we can't afford to pick up trash, and we have underfunded schools. We need a citywide plan for development and tax incentive use so that the neighborhoods that need investment are the ones where we prioritize it. And we have to clean up City Hall. Voters in this city approved Clean Missouri by 80% in November, and it doesn't apply to the local level. We've got to kick lobbyists off the floor of the Board of Aldermen, make sure that people are accessible to the business that we are conducting, and move us to a publicly financed campaign option so big money interests are no longer what's controlling City Hall.
Thank you. President Reed.
Before I begin, one of the candidates brought me up by name. Will I have an opportunity to rebut?
You can speak on it right now.
All right, but does that count toward my time?
Yes.
We'll start your 2 minutes now.
All right. All right. Well, you know, I'm currently the president of the Board of Aldermen, but that is not all that makes me up. I am the grandson of a Baptist minister, the son of a welder, and also my mother was a cook. They taught me and my 8 brothers and sisters to value the opinions of others and to work to make the world a better place. And all of us have individually gone on to attempt to do that in various different roles. I chose to do it through public service. And I take those teachings with me every day when I enter City Hall and work on anything that's going to affect any of us. Through that time, I've been able to get a great amount of things done. That time has not been 20 years, as said by my opponent from the Senate, but I have been here going on 12 years. Now, the things that I've been able to get done, we've been able to touch nearly every sector of our community. We've created youth crime prevention funds touching over 20,000 kids and getting them on the right path. I work to transform our school system, to bring our school system back to full accreditation. I've led nearly every program that deals with the turnaround of our community in the last 10 years. So I appreciate your support for this re-election. I'm looking forward to the debate.
Okay. Thank you. Let's get started with round 1.
Okay, so round 1 is the pre-debate survey responses. Every attendee should have received our wonderful President of the Board of Aldermen booklet that has the answers from all 3 candidates to different questions that we posed ahead of the debate. They've written responses and we've crafted response questions to their original answers. We've also, in the other rounds, integrated more than 150 submissions of questions from the community. We received these questions from residents in all 28 wards. And so we're gonna try our best to cover all of those issues. We feel really good about that. And so we're gonna get started with round 1. Reminder that candidates have 1 minute to answer the question when I finish. First question, Senator Nasheed. You stated in your response to question number 1, which asked, what do you feel is the most important role of the President of the Board of Aldermen, that, quote, we have a Board of Aldermen president who uses his role as an aldermanic seat on steroids and, quote, uses his position to serve his own selfish interests and the interest of his campaign contributors. You also called him unethical. Please explain the basis for those statements.
Well, first and foremost, let me just say this here. The Board of Aldermen president is a very powerful position to have. It serves on the Board of E&A as well as the legislative branch. And for far too long, the Board of Aldermen has been broken under the leadership of Lewis Reed. We have no campaign finance laws that keep lobbyists off of the floor. We have individuals that we don't know who's paying for their lunches or anything. We have a Board of Aldermen president that knows exactly what was stated in the Ferguson Commission report, as well as for the sake of all, and never one time implemented any of those policies. That's why I say it's broken and we need new leadership, and I am that leader that is going to bring results and that is very effective.
Thank you, Senator. President Reed, we're going to give you 45 seconds rebuttal.
All right. First thing is I invite the senator to really understand how the Board of Aldermen works and also understand some of the many things that we've done for the sake of all. We created a civilian oversight commission, added subpoena power to it. That's one of the things that, for sake of all, worked to bring the school system back to full accreditation. Can I
You're good. Keep going. Right. You have time.
Work to bring the school system back to full accreditation. Created youth employment by creating more youth summer jobs throughout our community, and a host of other things.
Thank you. Second question is to President Reed. In your response to question number 1, you stated that Senator Nasheed vigorously supported Francis Slay over you in the 2013 mayoral election. Why did you believe that was important for voters to know?
Because not only has she done that, Senator Nasheed has voted with the Republicans more often than not. She has been the deciding vote on major Democratic issues that that would impact our community in a positive manner and worked against them. She worked to cut unemployment benefits to people within our community that needed those benefits. She worked to cut TANF benefits for needy families in our city, and on and on and on.
So I just want to clarify. She's holding up different signs here. You still have time to speak. Some of them say 30 seconds, some of them say 15 seconds, and then she'll say time.
Okay.
But just because she moves doesn't mean you have to stop talking.
All right.
So we'll give you 30 more seconds if you want to
All right, perfect.
continue that.
She, you know, Senator Nasheed, I don't have to tell anybody in here about her real record. I mean, it's easy. Go on the internet, look it up. She has been one of the worst people in office in terms of helping advance our community that we've ever seen. She, on election day, when I was running against Francis Slay, she ran around on election day with Francis Slay's stickers on her face. And I told her directly, I said, his wife wouldn't even do that for him, so please take the stickers off your face.
Okay, that's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Nasheed, we're going to give you 45 seconds for rebuttal.
You know, Lewis Reed is laughable. Just yesterday, the Post-Dispatch basically stated that Lewis Reed did not do his financial reports with the ethics in terms of paying them. He lied on the financial report statement about doing the fact that he said that he paid it and he didn't pay it. And he's lying about my record right now. Lewis Reed has carried the water for Mayor Slay for over 16 years. And now all of a sudden, I'm the bad guy when he dismantled the strongest Black ward in the city of St. Louis. He was the deciding vote to dismantle the 20th ward under the role and the leadership of Mayor Slay. So he's carried Mayor Slay's water for over 16 years.
That's time. Alderwoman Green, one of the things that you cite as being consistent with the Ferguson Commission report is joining a lawsuit against the city and its police department for an unconstitutional protest response following the Stockley verdict. Do you believe the decision to join in on the lawsuit is consistent with your role as a legislator, and do you think that decision will hinder your ability to govern a city office?
I think that we have to use all the tools in the tools box in order to fight for change. You know, I sat down with a lot of stakeholders, ACLU being one of the main ones, to try to work with Judge Edwards, try to work with our police department in order to get us to put in place some policies that would make us abide by the 2 consent decrees that are against the city right now. And there was an unwillingness to do that. And so when other folks from the ACLU came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in joining on this lawsuit? I said yes. If I can use the power of my position and the privilege of my position in order to fight for change, I feel like that is an appropriate use of my position, and that I will do whatever it takes to force change, even if that means having to sue our own police department.
Thank you. Senator Nasheed, the next question is for you, and it follows up on the conversation that was just happening between you and President Reed. In his question, in the answer to question number 2 by President Reed, he referenced several parts of your record, and I'm just going to name some of them and give you a chance to respond on these specific issues. So he says that my opponent in the state Senate has worked to reduce unemployment benefits, citing a particular bill in 2014, to increase small loan bank fees, citing a bill in 2015, after taking $30,000 in donations from the bank industry, increase mandatory minimums, and increase court costs. And all of these policies are counter to the recommendations of the Ferguson Commission report. So the question is that information accurate, and how do you respond?
Again, we have a president of the Board of Aldermen right now that lied on his ethics reports, and he's lying about my record. All I have done for the last 12 years under the control of the Republican House, Senate, and Governor's Mansion was fight for reproductive rights for women and pro-choice issues. For those individuals, union members who Republicans were trying hard to turn back the clock on. I have been fighting the good fight for the city of St. Louis for over 12 years now, under the control of the Republican House, Senate, and Governor's Mansion. And if I can do it there, surely I can come back home and work with a Democratic body at the Board of Aldermen and make things happen. We're looking for results right now, and we haven't seen any results under Lewis Reed.
So I just want to ask a quick follow-up, specific follow-up before I allow rebuttal by President Reed, which is he cites to two specific bills, Senate Bill 673 in 2014, Senate Bill 345 in 2015. The first of those, he says, reduced unemployment benefits, and the second, increased small loan bank fees following $30,000 in donations by the bank industry. Are those specific votes accurate or inaccurate?
Lewis is lying. Thank you.
President Reed.
Boy, I'm really happy.
1 second.
I'm really happy that we have.
One second. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I'm really happy that we have a rebuttal. Everybody take down these two Senate bill numbers and just check for yourself so we can be clear. Senate Bill 673 in 2014 and Senate Bill 345 in 2015. Both of those Senate bills and more, Jamilah Nasheed has worked against us, all of us here. And she continues to do that. The reason she's running now is because I put an ordinance in place to investigate the banks for unfair banking practices. They then funded the campaign to get her in the race to split the vote, and that's what we're dealing with today.
Alderwoman Green, you responded that you do support the demand to close the workhouse and it should be done immediately, and went further to say that you will reallocate the $16 million dedicated to the jail to fund crime prevention programs through a participatory budget process. This is slightly different than Senator Nasheed's recommendation to close the workhouse but open a new facility. Why do you favor your approach over opening a new jail?
I think that we over-incarcerate already in our city. What we know right now is that anywhere between 90 to 98% of the folks who are at the workhouse at any given time are pre-trial. They are innocent under the law. We also know that when folks who have been bailed out, 95% of them bailed out without their own money, and they showed up to their court dates when they were released on their own recognizance. We don't need another jail. We don't need to spend more money putting more people out of work. What we need is to actually be investing our money into things like mental health, into things like affordable housing, into things like drug addiction, to address the heroin epidemic that is very prevalent in our city at the moment. Locking more people up, building more jails is not the option.
Senator Nasheed, would you like 45 seconds for a rebuttal?
Yes, I too agree that we cannot allow for those individuals who are incarcerated to be locked up simply because they cannot afford bond. What we need more now than ever before is job opportunities for young Black men so that they won't have to pick up a gun. And that's why I have been very instrumental in banding a box for young men who go and fill out an application. And the first thing is on an application is, have you ever been convicted of a felon? That's no longer on the applications on the state level or the federal level because of the efforts that I put forth.
Thank you. President Reed, in your answer to question number 5 regarding the workhouse, you said a number of things, including that you support the premise to close the workhouse. You support organizations like the Bell Project, but you don't believe that closing the facility is a first step and measure that can pass through the city government and be implemented. It is unclear, however, whether you personally support the demand to close the workhouse. Can you clarify your position?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, closing the workhouse, ultimately what we have to drive to is a system that's not holding people for 120, 300 plus days for pre-trial, right? We have to rehab our bail bond system, all from the top to the bottom. We have to rehab and rework our court systems so that it's working not just to lock up people for small infractions, but is working to assure that people have an opportunity to come back out and to lead productive lives.
So just to clarify, do you personally support the demand to close the workhouse?
Yes, I support the demands to close the workhouse as your organization has laid it out, but it's important to, and we spoke about this, it's important to change the messaging, because the average person thinks that what you're going to do is close the workhouse and let everybody walk out, right? But it's more to it than that. Because everybody, you know, but just let's just be clear, because some of the people that are in MSI have violent crimes, right? Have been involved in violent crimes.
Thank you for your response.
Senator Nasheed, and this is an issue we're going to ask all of the candidates about regarding airport privatization. But first, Senator Nasheed, you spent the majority of your answer to question number 6 regarding privatization, attacking Lewis Reed for supporting privatization and, quote, insisting his campaign donors be paid huge retainers before doing so, end quote, as well as attacking Alderwoman Green for opposing privatization and calling her political philosophy and worldview, quote, pie in the sky. Meanwhile, your position was to keep an open mind. Is your position regarding airport privatization, in fact, no position?
Well, that's a very good question. First and foremost, no vote for the people I will get under the control of the current mayor here. President of the Board of Aldermen. The president of the Board of Aldermen have made backdoor deals, have decided that the people should not have the right to vote on privatizing the airport. And let me tell you this here, if the people don't have a right to vote on the airport, I will not support any airport privatization.
Alderwoman Green, you were invoked in my question, so I'm going to let you have a 45-second rebuttal.
Sure. You know, privatization just as a concept is not something that we even need to be studying right now. This is a cash grab by the same group of folks that are involved in a lot of different development deals in our city, these consultants that just kind of figure out which deal they're going to make money off of this time. We have to look no farther than Chicago to know that privatization of their parking meter situation costs consumers more, and it's something that the city is greatly regretting that they ever did. St. Louis is not so unique that we cannot look to other cities to recognize that things like privatization just don't work. And in the scale of priorities for our city, this is not where we should be spending our time.
President Reed, you have a 45-second rebuttal as well.
Okay, first thing is, we have some major problems in our city, and we're going to have to find a way to find a source of revenue to address those issues. When we look north of Del Mar, we see the blight, we see major areas that need an infusion of capital. We're going to have to find a way to get that. So when I take a look at airport privatization, I think that it's important that we study it to see if it's a viable option to fund some of those many needs that we have across our city. But I'm glad that you pointed out that Senator Jamilah Nasheed continues to be a double agent.
So I'm going to allow a rebuttal by Senator Nasheed and just make clear that the moderators here have not called anybody a double agent. But I'm going to give you a 45-second rebuttal.
You know, it's just unfortunate that we've had Lewis Reed in office, and the only thing that he have been able to do was carry the water for those that have given him contributions and those individuals that want to privatize our airport. And let me tell you this here. Lewis Reed could have broken the vote on if the people should have a right to vote on it just last week, and he was nowhere to be found. He doesn't even think you have a right to vote on privatizing the airport, and that is so unfortunate.
We can't go back and forth all night. There's much more to do here. There's much more. We're going to move on to the next question. Sorry, thank you. Okay.
All right, question And question number 9 was based on the fact that more than 60% of the city's general fund budget goes to public safety, with the majority of that going to the police. President Reed, you acknowledged that you voted for this budget, but also, quote, look forward to working together toward a plan to reduce funds being allocated in this fashion. If that's your desire, why haven't you already made steps toward that goal during your tenure as president of the Board of Aldermen?
I have. If you take a look at the city's budget, part of what we've been able to do across the last few years to assure that funds that weren't available for our drug courts are now available, funds that weren't available for our youth programs and services, we were able to put additional funds in youth programs and services, and we've been working to shift the focus of our public safety department. And I'm one of 3 votes at the Board of E&A. But when you take a look at where we are versus where we came from, we made a tremendous amount of progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Thank you. Alderwoman Green, in your answer to question number 9 regarding the budget, it was clear that you did not agree with the current budget allocation that President Reed has voted for. Can you explain why, and how would you budget differently?
So right now, we spend almost 60% of our general operating budget on public safety. When we look particularly at policing, about 30%, a little bit over 30% of that budget is on policing. We spend more on policing than every single city on a per capita basis in this country besides Oakland, California. There is no reason that St. Louis needs to be spending that much on policing, especially when we are underfunding social services. When we only put 0.03% into health and human services, that is why we have high crime rates in our city. We need to be redirecting money from the police department, taking the money that we have for those additional officers that have not been filled, and redirecting that into social services and hiring social workers. That, to me, is what makes sense, and that is the type of budget that I would support, is one that is actually moving money into crime prevention, things like youth jobs, mental health, affordable housing, the things that actually prevent crime from happening in the first place.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to shift to the second round of questions, and we called this round In the News. This round of questions will focus on media coverage of your records, of stories that have been in the news in the past year, a couple of years, that have been sort of in the public dialogue. So we're starting with you, back with you, Alderwoman Green. In an article in the Riverfront Times, a journalist wrote that, quote, Green has earned some sniping from colleagues who see her as a show-off, more interested in playing to her progressive base than getting things done, end quote. Alderwoman, how do you respond to this statement, and how do you plan to balance your progressive ideals with a politically diverse Board of Aldermen? Furthermore, how do you respond to critics who say that you do not have the experience to lead the Board of Aldermen?
So I will be the first to admit that some folks do not like me. Some of the folks that don't like me are, Rex Singfield, former Republican Speaker of the House, Steve Tilley, Jeff Rorda, corporate lobbyists, and these are the types of folks that I'm happy to be on the bad side of. And they're the type of folks that I think, quite frankly, it is my responsibility to call out as a member of the Board of Aldermen for the influence that a lot of them have on the way that we conduct business. And quite frankly, if compromise means having to compromise my values to align with folks like that, then that's not the type of compromise I want. I do think that there are places that we can compromise at a Board of Aldermen. That is not happening now because we're not a deliberative body. It's, I have my 15 votes, I don't need to change anything. And that's what I think needs to change about our culture so that we actually are a more deliberative body. We take the folks that have legitimate criticisms and can move an agenda forward.
Thank you.
President Reed, sorry, that was loud. President Reed, you ran for mayor twice and lost. Are you running for re-election as president of the Board of Aldermen as a holdover position until you can capture a higher office?
Absolutely not. I enjoy this job as president of the Board of Aldermen, and it is not an easy job, but it's rewarding. You get an opportunity to touch people all across the city of St. Louis and better the lives of people. It's not a job that you do if you want to be popular and expect people to carry you down the streets on their shoulders. That's not what this job is. This job is about building coalitions for change, and we've done it successfully. That's how we were able to create the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that so many people love today. Me and a group of 9 other people created that fund. That fund now has created over $41 million into affordable housing, over 1.5 million bid nights.
Are you finished?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Senator Nasheed, in April of 2018, you voted against a Democrat-sponsored bill to prohibit lobbyist gifts to elected officials and institute term limit on certain positions within the General Assembly. The piece of legislation passed, but you were the only Democrat in the state Senate to vote nay on the bill. All other nay votes were Republicans. How do you explain your vote?
Well, during that time, the campaign finance laws were really tainted. I mean, you can have a guy like Rex Sinkfield that can have 15 or 20 different PACs. And so there was no transparency there. What we need now more than ever before is a leader that truly understands how important it is to bridge the gap across neighborhoods and make sure things are happening no matter the zip code. We've had Lewis Reed here for 20 years, and North St. Louis looks like a war zone. Children walking up and down the streets, and all they see is vacant and abandoned buildings, block after block after block. So the question is this here. The question is, the process was tainted under those rules and those laws, and I only made it transparent, even more transparent.
I have to have a
Hey,
rebuttal.
can you let us moderate?
Yes.
We were discussing.
I'm dying up here.
President Reed, we want to give you 45 seconds
All right.
for a rebuttal.
All right, real quick, you just heard from Double Agent Nasheed. That's what you just heard from. And let's just get this thing started right. First thing she talked about earlier, she talked about me breaking the tie or for the bill that died in committee. It was a vote of 4 to 2. If I show up with 1 vote, it's still a vote of 3 to 4. It still dies. So understand and learn how to count if you're planning to do this job. The next thing is, your record is your record. You just met with Rex Sinkfield 2 weeks ago, and you told him that you would support the airport privatization 100% if you become president of the Board of Aldermen. Stop being a double agent. Stop being a double agent.
That's time.
That's time.
Thank you.
Senator Nasheed, we're going to offer you 30 seconds to directly answer if the accusation is true.
You know, it's unfortunate that we have a lying Lewis that lies all the time, and he has no record to stand on, and that's why he's always attacking me, because he too told you all during the mayoral race that he didn't want to be president of the Board of Aldermen no more. And now here he's running for president of the Board of Aldermen. He lied then, he's lying now, and he's lying about my record. Don't believe
Senator
the hype.
Senator Nasheed, just for a clarification, did you meet with Rex Sinkfield 2 weeks ago?
No.
Thank you.
And I don't know where he got that lie from.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to go to the next
Thank you.
question.
Thank you. All right, and I'm going to remind the audience, we appreciate the engagement, but while they're answering, people are trying to hear. Please don't interrupt. Please don't shout things out. If you want to talk to them, they'll be here afterwards. All right, next question. Alderwoman Green, you have perhaps been the most vocal supporter of marijuana decriminalization and legalization in the Board of Aldermen. How would you like to see marijuana policy change in the city of St. Louis, and how would you ensure that the benefits of potential marijuana legalization reaches communities historically impacted by the criminalization of marijuana?
Thanks for the question. What I would like to see St. Louis do is follow the leads of about 24 other cities across this country, and basically saying that we are no longer using our police resources to enforce marijuana laws for adult use. I think that also should pertain to home grow of 6 plants or more. What we know in our city is that the smell of marijuana is often used as cause to do pedestrian stops. These pedestrian stops cause distrust between police and our community. And by changing those marijuana laws and taking away that probable cause component based just upon smell, that will help to build some trust. The second thing that I think needs to happen is we need to follow what Oakland, California has done and give priority in business licensing and setting up businesses in this new economy to folks who are part of communities who have disproportionately been impacted by the war on drugs.
Thank you.
President Reed,
Yeah.
you supported the most recent legislation to provide tax incentives for the Major League Soccer Stadium in St. Louis. Why do you favor using tax incentives in this way?
First off, in that soccer stadium deal, it is a site-based tax. What that means is that if you go there, you buy a hot dog, you buy a soda or beer, you pay for it, right? Over 350,000 people will visit that stadium on an annual basis. Overwhelmingly, majority of them, 90+% of them, are from outside of the city of St. Louis. What that means is that they're coming into the city spending their economic dollars so that we can capture those funds, so that we can begin putting people to work all across our city that have been long left out of the job market. If we want to truly address the issues of public safety, we're going to have to put people to work. We put people to work through economic development, and this is a place where we can have economic development and let somebody else pay for it. We need to build that soccer stadium.
Thank you. Alderwoman Green, you were one of only 2 members of the Board of Aldermen that opposed the tax incentive plan for the stadium. Why, and what do you say to those that say it can generate much-needed revenue for the city?
So first off, the financials that were given to us at the board showed only about $922,000 in profit to the city a year. I think that we are putting ourselves down, getting us into the same situation we were with the Dome. Either if MLS is not successful and they're on, questionable financial terms now, then we're stuck with an empty stadium. If it is successful, we are put on the hook for expansions to the stadium in 10 years and in 15 years. And during the committee hearings, the ownership group would not commit to not seeking bonds from the city if they want it to expand. I think we're going to end up, if it is successful, in the same place that we are with the Scott Trade Center of issuing bonds for non-essentials. Our credit rating was decreased after we issued those bonds, and the specific reasons that the credit reporting agency said was because we were issuing municipal bonds for non-essentials. I think that billionaires need to pay their fair share of taxes, and even though they are, philanthropists in our region, there is no reason that they can't pay something into our public school system.
Thank you. Senator Nasheed, in late 2014, you pushed for legislation that would create a 10-year mandatory minimum for all gun crimes in the state of Missouri, including for something as simple as concealing a weapon without the proper permit. There is significant social science that suggests mandatory minimums increase prison populations, deepen racial disparities, and have minimal impact on violent crime rates. How do you explain your past support for mandatory minimum sentences, and would you still promote mandatory minimums as president of the board?
Well, let me just say this here. We have a gun problem in our community. Too many of our children are dying at the hands of guns. Now, I am not for mandatory minimum sentencing when it comes to nonviolent offenses. But if you take and you shoot a kid by way of a drive-by shooting, there should be mandatory minimum sentences for violent crimes.
Just to follow up, would you change your support for mandatory minimums for gun crimes that did not involve use of the weapon and only for those that use the weapon, or are you still in favor of mandatory minimums for
mandatory
all
minimum
drug
for those individuals who pick up a gun and shoot an innocent person? They should have mandatory minimum sentences, not nonviolent offenders.
President Reed, in the past year, we've seen multiple officers indicted on federal criminal charges. Multiple lawsuits have been filed alleging police misconduct, and even just yesterday, the circuit attorney filed charges after another SLMPD officer. Let me say that again. Just yesterday, the circuit attorney filed charges after another SLMPD officer shot a fellow policewoman. Do you believe that the Board of Aldermen has a responsibility to exercise more stringent oversight of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department?
You know, that's why we created the Civilian Oversight Commission, and that's why we're working very closely with Judge Edwards today. A lot of the things that you see coming out of the police department now in terms of some of the indictments, those things are being led by Judge Edwards, working within that department and rooting out some of those old boy networks that existed prior to him coming there. He's doing a good job at it, and I think he needs to continue working on that. I think that all helps us all as city residents when those things happen. We end up with a better operating police department, a police department that works for us and not against us. We know that a lot of the murders that are happening across the city, a lot of them aren't being solved because people won't come forward. But you're not going to come forward if you don't trust the person that you're talking to, and you're not going to come forward if you do not know the person that you're talking to and have some inkling that, you know what, this conversation is going to remain between us, and you're going to work to address this issue.
Okay, now we're going to transition very quickly into round 3, which is the community questions from the co-sponsoring organizations. So those who have the prepared questions, I'm going to ask all of the odd number questions to go to my right in the aisle with the microphone, and all of the even number questions to my left, and please get in numerical order.
Go. We can start. Oh. My name is Martha Ferdinand. I'm representing Arch City Defenders. My question is for each candidate. Homelessness is a persistent problem in the city of St. Louis. However, not only has the city not significantly increased its investment in homeless services over the past several years, it has instead taken steps that have reduced the number of temporary shelter beds. What will you do as president of the board to expand supportive services and eliminate homelessness in the city?
Where should we start?
Each candidate will get 1 minute. We'll start with Senator Nasheed.
Well, first and foremost, let me say this here. Homelessness is a very serious problem in the city of St. Louis. The first thing that I would do when I become president of the Board of Aldermen is I will repeal the ordinance that doesn't allow individuals like yourselves to just simply give a homeless person a hot dog or a donut, because that is inhumane. What I will also do as president of the Board of Aldermen is work with the state level as well as the federal level and the whole region to begin to figure out how we can get the unhoused and affordable housing where they can become productive citizens and have a sense of dignity.
So it's the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that funds homeless services in the city. And for 4 or 5 years in a row, this fund was shorted about $500,000 a year. And I voted against our city budget because of that reason. I've previously worked with Arch City Defenders in putting together Homeless Bill of Rights legislation for the local level. I think that if we're closing a shelter, there has to be a 1-to-1 bed replacement, and that the city needs to be responsible for the belongings and the well-being of any person who is displaced because of closing that shelter. I also do not think that it should be a crime to feed somebody who is homeless. I actually think it is a form of discrimination if we are telling folks that if I meet somebody in a park and they're my friend who has a house and I can give them a sandwich and that's okay, but as soon as that person doesn't have a house, that's a crime, that's a problem. The city needs to greatly increase funding into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Charlotte just did a $50 million bond for affordable housing to address some of these issues. St. Louis can too.
So I told you earlier I was one of the 10 people to help create this Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And across those years, we made some tremendous headway, over $41 million to the fund, 1.5 million homeless bed nights, rehabbed over 2,000 units throughout the city, and also helped over 5,000 residents with mediation through foreclosures. And we've made some tremendous headway. There's a lot of work to be done still, you know, and the reason this is important to me, because I've been homeless twice, right? I was one of 9 kids when I was younger, so I understand this intimately. We have to continue to work to add additional funds to it. We just allocated a $5 million in grants this past week. That is going to be leveraged to nearly $100 million, and you'll hear about that in the coming weeks. And that's the type of thing we need to continue to do.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenny Powell. I'm representing the Mountain City Bar Association. We've heard a lot about crime and a lot about drugs and guns, but we haven't heard a lot about education. Obviously, education is critically important to the success of our youth, but beyond formal K-12 education, what should the city be doing to support youth development and opportunity? My question is for each candidate. Thank you.
We'll start with you, President Reed, and go the other way.
A number of things. You know, we need to continue to look at not just what's happening in the classroom, but what's happening outside of the classroom. These kids need to have a balanced meal before they go to school. They need after-school programs. We also, the role that athletics play in the total, you know, growth of a child should not be underlooked. So when we look at whether we're going to do a soccer stadium or not, one of the community benefits that we ask them to sponsor soccer leagues throughout schools all across the city of St. Louis and invest in our youth. We've done these things to great success. We know that our schools still have a long way to go, but we are now fully accredited, and I think that that's something that St. Louis should applaud. We still have a lot to do to continue to strengthen our schools and strengthen the curriculum. I think more preschools would help also.
Thank you for the question. First thing, I think, you know, as a former public school teacher in St. Louis Public Schools, this is an issue that is, you know, very near and dear to my heart. I spent about a decade working in education, mostly in early childhood, before running for office. I think one of the things we need to do is recognize at the board that the things that we pass, especially when it comes to tax incentives, impact our schools. It's revenue that our school district is foregoing every time we issue one of these. So we need to be very intentional with their use. Last year in the budget, I voted against the budget because when we passed Prop P, which was the sales tax for public safety, one of the things that was sold to the community is that $975,000 a year in that was going to go to youth jobs. And last year, that money didn't go to youth jobs and went to the police cadet program, which I don't think qualifies as youth jobs. That funding needs to actually go to youth jobs, and we need to also create a committee at the Board of Aldermen that specifically looks at education and how we can be better partners.
Thank you.
You know, I served in the House and the Senate for 12 years, and I have been very instrumental in bringing funding back home to the city of St. Louis for young men and women for the purpose of tutoring programs. A lot of our children are below proficiency in the areas of math and science. And if we don't get them equipped in those two areas, they're going to fall behind when it comes to the technology and the tech community. What we need now more than ever before is a Board of Aldermen that will have that bully pulpit that can go outside of that Board of Aldermen and talk to individuals that's in the private sector to put more monies towards math and science tutoring and after-school programs. And that's what I'm willing to do as president of the Board of Aldermen, use that bully pulpit.
Hello, my name is Devin. I'm representing Action St. Louis. Woo. Woo. My question is for each candidate. Residents are deeply concerned about the pending ward reduction. Many have concerns that with only 14 wards, Black residents will have less representation and it will become increasingly difficult for informed citizens with fewer resources to run for office. What is your plan to ensure the ward reduction process doesn't dilute Black political power in the city of St. Louis?
I'm going to start with you, Megan, and then Lewis.
Okay,
and Jamilah.
thanks. So I think we need to use what was the redistricting that was put in Clean Missouri as a blueprint. You know, the first thing that Clean Missouri said is when districts are redrawn, we have to prioritize districts that are historically majority minority. That needs to be the number one thing that we do. Second, I think we need to take the drawing of the lines out of the Board of Aldermen. I don't think politicians should be drawing our own lines. When we do it for political purposes, not necessarily for the best interests of communities. I think we need to hire an independent demographer and work with an agency, perhaps like the Brennan Center for Justice, that specializes in equitable redistricting in order to facilitate a community-led process about what this looks like. And I also think we need a publicly financed campaign system so that small dollar donors can actually impact elections, and we can make sure that candidates that are supported by people and those small dollars can get elected, not just the folks that are backed by big developers and big corporations.
The plan that Alderwoman Green just outlined would result in exactly the opposite of what you just asked about. I'm telling you because I know. I'm telling you because I've been through multiple redistrictings. This last redistricting process, they had planned to remove 2 African-American wards, wipe them out, and move them to the south side. We fought with then Mayor Francis Slade, took that process away from him and one of his friends that are on this panel, and were able to salvage those wards, and were able to draw the lines so that we did not wipe out those wards. If you turn this over to just some independent body, right now, Alderwoman Green fought hard against the majority of African-American aldermen that were working to assure that there was some equity in redistricting. She fought against them for this new process, this process that would be run by some independent entity without the understanding of the roots of our community. I think that's a bad idea.
Thank you.
What we need to do is make sure that it's racially equitable across this city when it comes to redistricting. And I know that I'm with you. I believe that we need a demographer to come in, someone that's from the outside, someone that is not politically connected with any party, to be able to draw the lines and make them fair and balanced across this city of St. Louis. Now, it didn't happen when the lines was drawn and the 20th Ward was dismantled under Lewis Reed's leadership. He was the one vote that dismantled the strongest ward in the city of St. Louis. We cannot allow for him to be a part of drawing the wards and redistricting here in 2020.
All right.
President Reed, we're going to give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
All right. And this is coming from the double agent that voted with the Republicans to wipe out an entire congressional seat here in the city of St. Louis. I mean, come on. Senator Nasheed, please, for Christ's sakes, just try to be honest today. You understand that they're recording this and people can go back and watch this and really pull up exactly what happened. I mean, be honest, if nothing else, today, for Christ's sakes.
Thank you for that rebuttal.
Man, oh man.
Good evening. My name is Jatia Raymond, and I'm here representing for Harris-Stowe State University Student Ambassadors. My question is for each of the candidates. How will you personally support endeavors to make St. Louis City more environmentally sustainable and mitigate the effects of climate change in our region?
Senator Nasheed.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear.
How will you personally support endeavors to make St. Louis City more environmentally sustainable and mitigate the effects of climate change in our region?
Well, first and foremost, what we have to do, all new development that occurs here in the city of St. Louis, we have to make sure that it has a green finger to it. We can no longer allow for our homes to be built and they're not energy efficient, and there's no green policy that comes along with that. We need to make sure that we are talking with individuals like the Sierra Club that truly knows the importance of climate change, partner with them, bring their ideals to the table, and implement those ideals here in the city of St. Louis. And that's what I'm willing to do as president of the Board of Aldermen.
Thank you. So we know in the city right now that about 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. So what I think needs to happen is, as we are issuing tax incentives for new buildings in our city, that we need to require that they are being built energy efficient, they need to be built green. I think the other thing we need to look into doing is passing some kind of bond initiative that allows us to update older buildings and infrastructure and make them environmentally friendly. Third thing we need to do is get a comprehensive plan for traffic in our city. So I don't think that aldermen should be in charge of putting in stop signs, and that's a lot of the reason we have so many. And when that happens, there's a lot of idling that happens, and that's, that impacts asthma rates, it impacts the environment. And so if we can get a comprehensive traffic plan in place as well, I don't think we're gonna have as many stop signs in the city, and we're gonna have a healthier environment.
President Reed.
All right, I'm leading on this issue today. You heard some of the things about, partnering with the Sierra Club. I've already done that. We're working to to bring St. Louis to 100% clean energy by 2050. And we're headed on our way. We're working on a development plan right now for it. I led the effort to pass the One St. Louis sustainability plan across the entire region. So now the entire region has a sustainability plan in place. I've also worked to put in many green initiatives, the anti-idling law, so that buses and big transportation vehicles cannot just sit there in their trucks and idle all night. I also worked to, put in place the new building codes. And in the Midwest, we led the entire country down through the Midwest for adopting the new green building codes here in the city of St. Louis.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Mike Bolden with Action St. Louis and also the Bill Project, and this question is posed by Metropolitan Congregations United. My question is for each candidate. Currently, our public works funding is distributed on a ward-by-ward basis with aldermen as the primary decision makers on how funds are allocated. Do you believe this is an effective approach? Why or why not? And what would you change about it to address public work challenges across the city?
Is it me? President Reed?
I think that this is as fair a system as we can have, because that way we are assuring that every ward across the city gets some funding. I think we should look at adjusting it long term so that we can apply it more by need. But under the previous mayor, I was not comfortable doing that, because we saw right now that there has been a resistance in investing north of Del Mar. If they were able to decide right off the top whether they were going to put $1 north of Del Mar, it would not have happened. And I think that that's the mistake moving forward. We need to assure that every ward has an opportunity for some base funding across this city. And that ward capital fund is a way to assure that.
So right now, every ward in this city gets about $300,000 a year in ward capital funding to do all of our dumpsters, roads, sidewalks, every capital expense. I have a bill I'm a co-sponsor on with Alderman Williamson, who just retired a little bit early. And what we did is we worked for about 6 months to develop a different funding model for it that prioritized giving more funding to wards that were larger, which are predominantly north side wards, wards that have more vacancy, wards that have poorer health outcomes, lower college attention rates. There were a couple other indicators that we went in there. Because if we're trying to design an equitable system, what it means is that we need more money going into the parts of the city that have the least investment in it, not an equal amount of funding in every single ward.
I don't believe that the award capital should be dispersed as it is today. When you look at the 23rd Ward doesn't have the same problems as the 3rd Ward. You have vacant and abandoned buildings, block after block. You have streets that needs to be paved. And I think that the ward capital should go towards those communities that are struggling far greater than any other ward, like the 23rd or the 14th. There needs to be more money going towards north versus south when it comes to ward capital.
Hi. My name is Danielle. I'm representing We Power and the First Ward. President Reed, while you have presided over the Board of Aldermen for 12 years, the gap between the North Side and the rest of the city has widened. North City residents feel neglected and ignored by city officials. Why should voters believe re-electing you will not just result in more of the same?
Yeah, I thank you for that question, because it's real. I mean, that's why I ran for mayor of the city of St. Louis against then Mayor Francis Slay, because it was clear that the things that were happening within those departments weren't operating equivalently across the city of St. Louis. So one of the things that I did once I became president of the Board of Aldermen, I created balance in our committees. I empowered the North Side aldermen more than they ever have before. And the Post-Dispatch came after me because they said, you've made some of these committees majority African American. Do you think that's playing race politics? And I said, well, if the mayor has a problem talking to exactly one African American to get his policies passed, then you should look at the mayor and not me and not the aldermen that are representing wards equally across this city.
Hi, I am Reverend Cassandra Gould, and I represent Missouri Faith Voices. We received this question from one of our members for Senator Nasheed. Senator Nasheed, as you know, Faith Voices, amongst other grassroots organizations, worked at the state level to take big money out of politics. According to your November 2018 MEC report, you've received campaign contributions from more than 15 PACs, ranging from about $1,000 to $10,000. And so our question is, how can everyday citizens in the city be assured that their interests and their priorities will take a priority with you over wealthy donors and special interest groups?
That's a great question. Let me tell you this here. No matter how many people believe in me and give me contributions, that would never, ever define who I am and the policies that I fight for. I have been fighting on the state level for policies that impact the quality of life for people here in the city of St. Louis for 12 years. And I have never one time passed legislation based on a contribution.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, my name is DeMarco Davidson. I'm representing Metropolitan Congregations United. Alderwoman Green, your ward has become home to some of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis, while many lower income and predominantly black residents have been pushed out. This is just one of the places in St. Louis where gentrification has resulted in longtime city residents being alienated from the benefits of reinvestment and urban renewal. How can voters trust you, Alderwoman Green, that you will be committed to equitable development that serves all of the city residents?
Thank you. So at the Board of Aldermen, I've been one of the most vocal critics of our tax incentive system. And in my own ward, and I'll own it, the first year and a half I was in office, I sponsored some tax abatement bills that if I went back now, I would not have made the same decision today. One of the challenges that we have in Tower Grove right now is conversions. From 2 families to 1 families, from 4 families to 2 families, and it is displacing a lot of folks. I think we need a citywide development plan that can deal with neighborhoods like Tower Grove that are gentrifying that way, while also addressing neighborhoods that are seeing underdevelopment. That also looks like having a citywide tax incentive plan that will incentivize development in areas of the city that aren't seeing it. If someone can get a 10-year tax abatement for a $300,000 house in the 15th Ward, there's not a lot of incentive to go and develop out north of Del Mar where the profit margins aren't as high. And so if we can get a comprehensive plan in place, which is something that I've been pushing for, that is codified to hold us accountable, that is how I think we move forward.
Okay. So that concludes round 3. We want to thank all of our co-sponsoring organizations. We received more than 150 questions through an online form that we set up about a month ago from residents in all 28 wards. Over the course of these 4 rounds, we've attempted to put those 150 topics. Most of them were similar. We got about 30 questions about ward reduction, 20 questions about public safety into these 40 questions that we're asking. So that's why we are not asking for public questions, because there was no way we could take 150 questions in this room in 2 hours. And we didn't pay Harris-Stowe, so we can't demand more time. So the 4th round, our last round, is our speed round. Candidates will speak to their position on different issues impacting the community. You will have
45 seconds.
You'll have 45 seconds to answer these questions, and you'll go in order from Nasheed to Lewis each time?
We'll say who will start each round.
Yeah, we'll say who will start each time. But 45 seconds, not a minute.
Okay, first question, and we'll start with this one on Senator Nasheed and move from my left to right. Rising star Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has made national waves identifying as a democratic socialist and embracing policies like Medicare for all and tax rates up to 70% for millionaires and billionaires. Do you support democratic socialism as the right direction for democratic politics? And do you personally identify as a democratic socialist?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a Democrat. I'm a pragmatic Democrat that gets resolves, get things done, and get results. I believe that we need someone that can truly understand how important it is to do away with the divisiveness here in the city of St. Louis, bring people together as one so that we can move this city forward. And I believe that as a president of the Board of Aldermen, we need an agenda at the Board of Aldermen for the overall city of St. Louis, and that's what I'm willing to do. I'm a Democrat.
Alderwoman Green?
Yes, I'm a democratic socialist, and I have the I have the endorsement of the Democratic Socialists of America, the national endorsement, and I'm proud to have it, and I'm proud to wear it. We know that democratic socialism, the ideals that people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are supported by the majority of Americans, almost 70% of Democrats and 55% of Republicans, because we recognize that so many of the issues that we have in our city and in our country are grounded in crony capitalism, and if we're not willing to address that, if we're not willing to address corporatism, then we cannot underwrite, we cannot undo a lot of the inequities that are in our city, our state, and in our country.
President Reed.
I'm a Democrat and I'm not a socialist. If you take a look at a lot of this, what socialism stands for, a lot of those things will not help us in the end. And we have some real problems that need to be addressed directly. My friend just to my right here, she said that she was not a socialist, and I agree, she's not a socialist. I know she's not a socialist because she worked with the Republicans to kill Obamacare in the state of Missouri. Some programs like that are really important for the average person throughout the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Okay, 30-second rebuttal, Senator Nasheed.
You know, it's unfortunate that Lewis Reed keeps lying to you all. I was a person that actually pushed Medicaid expansion for the last 4 years. Go check my record. And the reason that our city is going under is because we have had Lewis Reed in leadership for far too long. For over 16 years, 20 years he's served, and this city has been going down, down, down. What we need now more than ever before is someone that can, like myself, that was able to work across party lines, because Republicans, they control the House and the Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with you, President Reed, and go to your right. Will you seek or accept the endorsement of the St. Louis Police Officer Association and its business manager, Jeff Rorta?
First, let me iron one thing out. The Senate bill I was talking about is Senate Bill 306. If you don't remember it, it was in 2009. I ask all of you to go look it up so that you understand that she did stand with the Republicans to kill Obamacare in the state of Missouri. Also, 20 years. I have not served for 20 years. I beg you just to get the math right. 20 minus 8 is what? 12. That's the number of years that I've served. Now, if we take a look at, will I seek the support of Jeff Rorta? Jeff Rorta and others are standing behind Senator Nasheed because she served with them, and she's worked to help them out time and time again.
So your answer is no, you will not seek the endorsement of the St. Louis Police Officer Association?
Here's what I'd say. If I get the...
Yes.
We got it, y'all.
You used your full time on the other answer. We just need to know yes or no.
Yes, yes. If the police department endorses me, I'm going to take their endorsement.
Thank you. Alderwoman Green.
No, I will not accept the endorsement, and I'm not seeking the endorsement of the SLPOA, nor Jeff Rorta, nor have I ever sought the endorsement.
Senator Nasheed?
Well, yeah, they called me last week asking me to come in and do an interview. I have not called them back yet. I will not be seeking their endorsement.
Okay, let's start with Alderwoman Green on this one. Which endorsement have you received already that you're most proud of?
Probably the Democratic Socialists of America endorsement. It was a very long process to get it, and they don't put their seal of approval just on any person. They want to know that you're consistently working toward progressive change, that you are consistently working toward racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, and I was proud to be able to go through that pretty rigorous process to earn that endorsement.
Thank you. President Reed?
The majority of the members of the Board of Aldermen, and the one that just strikes to my core is Alderwoman Sharon Tyus. Alderwoman Sharon Tyus and I have gone back and forth for years, and when you have someone like Alderwoman Sharon Tyus step out and say, you know, I'm going to endorse you and I'm going to support you because it's the right thing to do, that one touched me. She is a really hard fighter for the people throughout our community. And as the head of the Board of Aldermen, as president of the Board of Aldermen, sometimes you come at odds with various different aldermen. And you know that you're doing a good job when you can come back together and work for the betterment of all people.
I'm sorry,
across
that's
the
time.
city. All right,
thank you. Senator Nasheed.
I think the most important endorsement that is important to me will be the people. I have had the endorsement thus far of approximately 10,000 people that have said yes, they are willing to vote for me on March the 5th, and that's what's important, the endorsement by the people and for the people.
Okay, we're going to start with Senator Nasheed for this one. Do you support removing lobbyists from the floor of the Board of Aldermen and imposing campaign contribution limits on municipal elected officials?
Absolutely. I don't think no lobbyist should be on the floor, in the chamber, at City Hall. We don't do it on the state level, and we shouldn't do it here. We should also make sure that if individuals are buying gifts or if individuals are buying lunch for Board of Aldermen members, then we should have the right to know that. We don't have that right now. And I also believe that we need to make sure that while individuals are down there playing politics, that they should not be playing politics on the backs of the people. They should be up in the upper chamber where they belong.
Yes, I support removing lobbyists from the floor of the board. I previously had a board bill to do just that. It did fail in committee, and I'm looking forward to being president and assigning different folks to committees to ensure that that bill makes it to the full floor of the board where it will pass. I also support a publicly financed campaign option. I do not take corporate PAC money because I believe in living my values. And to date, our campaign has had over 1,200 donations made to it, 66% from people in the city of St. Louis, averaging $53. And that is the way that campaigns should be run.
President Reed.
Alderwoman Green has taken money from PACs and money from corporations. In her campaign finance report, just go take a look. Lobbyists, first thing is we are required to disclose lobbyist gifts here at the Board of Aldermen. That's already in play to Senator Nasheed. But when we take a look at structural things and things that will make substantive changes to the Board of Aldermen, lobbyists on the floor of the board, it's not the way it sounds, right? Lobbyists or people representing various different commissions and department heads are relegated to one side of the wall of the Board of Aldermen. Moving them upstairs will make absolutely no difference in what's happening on the floor. If you want to move them upstairs. The Board of Aldermen can take that action at any time.
Okay.
Could I respond to?
I will, just one second. Okay. President Reed, yes or no, do you support removing lobbyists from the floor of the Board of Aldermen? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alderwoman Green, for 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Just going to say, in terms of corporate PAC money, I do not accept corporate PAC money. There is a difference between PACs like union PACs and PACs that are forwarding the agenda of corporations. I will accept union PAC money. I will accept money from PACs like NARAL and Planned Parenthood. I will not accept money from corporations that have PACs attached to them.
Thank you. President Reed, are you in favor of St. Louis City adopting sanctuary city policies to protect the rights of undocumented residents?
I introduced the measure on the floor of the Board of Aldermen and got it adopted, yes.
Alderwoman Green?
Yes, I am in support of it. What I think we need to do in the city, since we have local control of our police department, we have the ability to direct what our police department does. I think we should be instructing our police department to not collect data on immigration status, because if the city is not housing that data, then we're not under any obligation to provide that to the federal government. And that's how we can create a safer space for all people who are living in our city.
And Senator Nasheed.
I too agree with Alderwoman Green that we need to make sure that those individuals who are just coming here due to asylum that wants to get their lives in order and back on track, they should have a right to not be harassed. They should have a right to be able to work and live and play in a country that is immigrants all over this country. We have immigrants that was born here. People have come far, far away to be able to live, work, and play in this country. We're all immigrants, and we should treat immigrants as such.
Thank you. We received a lot of requests for questions about your campaign contributions. Will you make your campaign contributions available to the public on your website to foster transparency? Alderwoman Green, we'll start with you.
Sure, I can definitely do that. Everything's on mec.mo.gov, but I understand that that website's cumbersome. So I am happy to put that together and get it out online.
Thank you. President Reed?
Absolutely. But I do have to say one thing. Senator Nasheed voted with the Republicans to restrict undocumented immigrants from being able to go on to post-secondary education. And that's one of the things that I'd like to hear her respond to.
Again,
Senator Nasheed, would you answer the question about the transparency, and then we'll give you time to
Again, is lying Lewis. I mean, he just lies about
just
it all.
Look up the record.
And the thing about it is I have fought hard on the floor, in the House, in the Senate to protect immigrants' rights here in the state of Missouri, and I will continue to do so. You can go check my record. Again, we need to begin to talk about how we're going to move this city forward. Under the leadership of Lewis Reed, it hasn't happened, and we need to be talking about the results that needs to happen in order for this city to be equitable across neighborhoods. His attacks will not work. People are tired of Lewis Reed's leadership, and they're ready for him to go. So he can keep attacking, but no, that's false.
Okay, and just to clarify, because we've spent most time about the rebuttal, you will put your public donations, you'll put your MEC report on your website for people to see?
Oh, absolutely.
Dating back to last year?
Oh, absolutely.
As well as current campaign contributions, just to be clear. Not the former MEC reports, but we're talking about for this campaign. Okay.
Thank you.
We do have a follow-up for you, President Reed, regarding a news report in yesterday's St. Louis Post-Dispatch about a Missouri Ethics Commission fine that you received, stated that you had paid, and this report said that you have not paid it. Can you please clarify what's happening with the fine that's outstanding with the MEC?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question. That fine came about because of one of my opponents filing an action against me to try to get a leg up in the campaign. The MEC has two addresses. They have two addresses, a physical address and a mailing address, right? Our response or our check went to the physical address. It came back and it was mailed back to the MEC. So what I said in the Post-Dispatch article was correct. And I've always been open and transparent with everything related to the Ethics Commission and all of my campaign financing. But one of the things that you all will see in the coming weeks—
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Let's start with Senator Nasheed on this one. Did you support Proposition P, which passed in 2018 and provided additional funds to increase police salaries, among other things? Why or why not?
Yes, I supported Proposition B. Proposition P for police to be able to have a raise. I'm not anti-police, make no mistake about it, okay? But I am anti-corrupt police, okay? And I believe that individuals should have the opportunity to leave their homes and come back safely, and if they die, they should have their family should have the opportunity to make sure that their families are well off if something happened to their loved ones. So yes, I supported it. Again, I am not anti-police. I have never been anti-police, but I am anti-police corruption.
Thank you. President Reed?
Absolutely, I supported it. You know, when we look at trying to maintain our good officers, because not every officer is bad, but our good officers, we really stood the chance of losing those good officers to the county. And I think that it was important to be able to retain those good officers here in the city of St. Louis. You know, we have a lot of challenges within our department. There needs to be some major restructuring, retraining, and everything else within the department to assure that that department works for the people and not against the people. We see a lot of problems happening and playing out on a daily basis, including the shooting that just happened just this week. But by shorting them on the paycheck, that does not help us.
And Alderwoman Green.
I did not support Prop P. I do not believe in putting more money into a broken system. I particularly do not believe in putting more money into a broken system if there are no strings attached to it to try to fix that system. In a lot of ways, this was a blank check to just say, you're getting raises while we still have all of these problems in the police department. Let's make no mistake that this happened. You know, voters did approve it a month and a half or 2.5 months after the Stockley verdict, when we saw so many abuses by our police department of protesters and of journalists. And I don't think that we should be putting more money into a flawed system. We need to be putting money into social services and things that will actually prevent crime.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to keep this one simple. Yes or no are the only options. Do you support a public vote on airport privatization? Alderwoman Green, we'll start with you.
Yes.
President Reed?
Yes.
Senator Nasheed?
Yes.
Great. That was great. Good job.
All right.
We
Well, you know, I think we can do the same thing on this question. Do you believe that St. Louis City needs to institute term limits for local elected offices? We'll start with Senator Nasheed.
Yes.
Alderwoman Green?
For mayor, yes. For legislators, no.
And President Reed.
Can I take the same?
I'm sorry?
Can I take the same privilege? Or just yes or no?
Yes.
You can have a comma.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you, thank you. I think in some cases it may make a difference. In other cases, it could be problematic. We see what happened at the state. So I would say no.
Okay. All right, well, that concludes round 4. And now we're going to give each candidate a minute, 1 minute, for closing remarks. And we will start with President Reed, then Alderwoman Green, then Senator Nasheed.
I just want to thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you today. Being the president of the Board of Aldermen is not an easy job. It's a job that requires compromise. It requires you working with people from all areas of this city. We've made some tremendous headway over my time as president of the Board of Aldermen, and it has not been 20 years. We have someone sitting on this panel that is an obvious double agent. She's done things to just kill the things that we need done here in our city. As a senator, she represents over half of this city, so a lot of the problems she wants to talk about are problems that she's in charge of addressing today. And she refuses to address them because she continues to work against our interests with the Republicans. We need people within city government that are representing people within city government. That's what I've done since I've been in office. I do it consistently, which is why overwhelmingly the majority of the members of the Board of Aldermen are backing my candidacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. You know, it would be an honor to serve as president of the Board of Aldermen, and I know that it's not going to be an easy job, and it's not a job that I can do by myself. It is a job that is going to require that each and every one of you who is in this room today comes and shows up when we decide that we're going to legalize recreational marijuana in this city, and shows up when we decide that we're going to close down the workhouse once and for all. We need to have the leadership in place who has the courage of their convictions, who will stand up and do what's right even if it's not politically expedient. And I'm ready to do that. I've proven that I'm ready to do that. And so I really hope that I can count on your vote so that in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, St. Louis is known nationally, but not for our problems, because of our solutions.
Thank you.
Let me thank you all for being here today. You know, the city, we have some great things happening here. We have Cortex, IKEA, all of those great developments along the central corridors in South St. Louis. But when you look up north of Del Mar, all you see is vacant and abandoned building, block after block after block. When I get here, I'm going to make it equitable across the neighborhood, and that's not happening under the leadership of Lewis Reed. We need someone that's going to look at the city as a whole so that it can thrive and grow, because our image has been tainted, and the only way we're going to change it is we have to change the status quo, and the status quo is Lewis Reed, and he has to go. We can no longer have Lewis Reed representing the city of St. Louis and having North St. Louis look like a war zone.
Can I get a mic? All right, thank you, tech person. Excellent, that was fast. We want to thank our 3 candidates, President Lewis Reed, Alderwoman Megan Green, Senator Jamilah Nasheed,